Hi friends, it's Mieko, and today I have an extra special video because we are going to go through all the books that you guys recommended to me in the comment section this year. You know how I always ask for books that you guys think that I will like in the end of my video, and I'm just so grateful every time I see a recommendation. And I have to say, you guys know me so well because I have read some of my favorite books from the comment section recommendations. But I have to admit that I'm not the most organized person that I know, and sometimes I just forget information or I write them down here and there and I just don't know how to put them together. So this year I'm thinking doing something new, that is to go through all the recommendations in my comment section for this year's video, and we can sit down and go through them together. So this way I have a reminder that I have a list of amazing books to read from. And by doing so, I hope you can also spot some books that you are interested in, because at the end of the day, if you're here, that means we have similar taste in books. Some of the people who recommended book to me also have their booktube or book blog, so I'll link all their information down below. If you haven't, please go check them out because apparently they also have great recommendations. And today we have 30 individual book titles across 6 major genres and also 4 authors for me to check out for the From and About Asia project for Malaysia. So without further ado, let's dive into the books. The first genre that we are looking at is classics or modern classics, and the first book title is The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector. It is translated by Giovanni Pontiero, and this book was recommended to me by Faye. I've never heard about this book before, but it sounds fascinating. It's talking about the story of a underprivileged girl in Brazil. She lives in a very frugal life as a typist, but she has dreams as everybody, but she also has all sorts of life difficulties. However, in contrast of all her material limitations, she is inwardly free because she doesn't know how unhappy she should be. The book follows her story and talking about poverty, identity, love, and the art of fiction. I mean, it's already sounding like a 5-star setting to me. Next, we have Written on the Body by Jeanette Winterson. This book was recommended to me by Alex, and I have read Jeanette Winterson's Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit years ago, and I wanted to read more of her books. And I'm so embarrassed now because I feel like I repeat the sentence I just said of how much I want to read more Jeanette Winterson all the time, but it just hasn't happened yet. So let's just make sure together that this will happen soonish in the future. And Alex said the writing of this book is gorgeous, and it says that this book is a very emotional secret code only visible in certain lights. I mean, I do not need to know more. Lily, who always have great recommendations, recommended The Penal Colony by Franz Kafka. She said that this book has traumatized her, so I'm really intrigued to see why was that. But at the same time, I'm also very intimidated by this because Kafka is just one of those big names where you always feel like you are not prepared to read their books. But I guess we have to start somewhere, and might as well be this book. Sean recommended A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr in my Broken Heart story videos. This book follows Tom, who spent a summer in a remote Yorkshire village to restore a medieval mirror. He lived on the bell tower and watched time go by in this peaceful and tranquil town. However, at the end of the summer, the job was done and he has to leave. I believe we follow his reflections of the summer and the memories that have been lost. The last title in this classic section is actually a trilogy set in Norway. Carla recommended them to me because I am a fan of Nordic culture. And the trilogy is called Kristin Lavransdatter and written by Sigrid Undest and translated by Tiina Nunnally. The story is set in the 14th century Norway, and we follow the life story of Kristin. I cannot believe that I did not know this trilogy before because it was such a classic, but Carla was right. I'm always on the lookout for Norwegian classics, and this one I just simply cannot miss. Moving on to literary fiction, the first one we have The Thorn by Ito Hiromi and translated by Jeffrey Angels. This book was recommended to me by Kiki when we were talking about Ito's other book that has not been translated into other languages yet. The story follows a woman who is torn between 2 families, her husband and kids in America and also her aging parents in Japan. It talks about the reality of living in a globalized society, and I just cannot help but think about the parallel of this story and also my life. Another book from Japan is Haven by Kawakami Mieko and translated by Sam Bett and David Boyd. This book was on the shortlist of the International Booker Prize last year, and it has actually since been on my radar. but this time it was recommended to me by Leaked Pages. The story is talking about a 14-year-old schoolboy who has a lazy eye, so he is always subjected to torment, and the only person who understands him is one of his classmates. Kawakami is one of the most phenomenal writers in contemporary Japan who has so many books that I want to read, including this one. Leaked Pages also recommended me The Lost Daughter from Elena Ferrante, translated by Goldstein. You all know that how much I love Elena Ferrante's The Napoleon Quartet, and I have since been wanting to read all of her books. Actually, I've already collected her other books. One of them is The Days of Abandonment, but I have since added this book to my priorities after this recommendation. The main character is called Linda, who is on a vacation alone after so many years staying together with her daughters and now divorced husband. She met this young mother called Nina and they started to chatting, and by having this conversation, Linda revealed some of her darkest secret. Shannon recommended some books for my From and About Asia reading project for the country of Malaysia. One of them is The Sum of Our Follies by Shih-Li Kow. This is also an author that Freddie recommended. This is a book talking about the story of a Malaysian town with no claimed fame except the annual flood, a dubious legend, and the general mediocrity. We follow two narrators describing their life, changes, and growth. This book reminds me of The Last Quarter of the Moon for some reason, and I'll make sure to pick it up for my reading project. Shannon also recommended the short story collection from the same author called Ripples and Other Stories, which I'm also very interested to check out. Anna also recommended a book for Malaysia, which is The Garden of Evening Mist by Twan, and this is actually a historical fiction, so let's just transit into the historical fiction genre. The story was set in 1951 in the post-war Malaysia. Fate brought different characters into this mystic garden, and we learn how they really survived the war. This book was actually already on my TBR for years and years, and I even have the physical copy of it. This is another book that I'm really embarrassed to say that I have not read yet, but I will make sure to pick it up for my Malaysia reading project. Next, in historical fiction, we have Milkman by Anna Burns, and this book was recommended to me by Hessler Dunlop, and I'm happy to report that this is one of the books that I've already read before this recommendation. The book was the winner of the Booker Prize one year, and I read it the same year. The story was set in the backdrop of the troubles in Ireland, and we follow this young woman who's been struggling of her encounters with this milkman, which leads to some mysterious rumors of hers in her community. I remember I liked this book quite a lot. I feel like it portrays the women's daily dilemma precisely, and it was quite atmospheric. Hessler Dunlop recommended another book to me, which I haven't read yet. It is Carr by Bernard MacLaverty. This book is also set in Ireland, but it's in the 1980s, and I believe it's been adapted into a movie, which I'm also very interested to check out. I believe this is a haunting love story set in a land where innocence and tenderness can only flicker in the dark. Following, we have the second book that was recommended by Sean. It is The Lost Gardens by Helen Humphreys. The story is set in 1941. We follow a gardener in London who doesn't want to witness her city to go under war, so she actually took a job in the countryside of England to look for a safe haven. However, she found herself in the group of soldiers and land growers. Moreover, she needs to manage all the things and uncover the hidden land. Following, we have a short story which is about 60 pages long, and it's called The Yellow Wallpaper by Sherlock Perkins Gilman, and it was recommended to me by Lydia again in my mind-twisting book video. Lydia says this story deals with mental health and is great for spooky season. Now the spooky season has just passed us, but who says we cannot read stories like this all year long? In the story, we follow a woman who is diagnosed depression by her physician husband, which is already fishy enough for me, and I am so intrigued. Zach mentioned a book that sounds very interesting and reminds people of Iliad Christ. It's called The Adventures of China Aaron by Gabriela Cabas, and is translated by Fiona McIntosh. In this book, we follow a woman called China Aaron, and she travels across Pampas in a converted wagon and make friends with new people who's called Liz. They opened each other's world and have adventures together. Iliad Christ is one of the most unique books that I've ever read, so I'm eager to read anything that reminds people of it. Now let's venture into science fiction fantasy. I have read The Parable of the Sewer by Octavia E. Butler this year, and after I've done that, so many people told me that I have to read Kindred, especially Cousin and Maria. The thing is, I have the physical copy of Kindred and I have been meaning to read it for years and years, but I don't know why I just read Parable of the Sewer first. In this book, we follow Stana, a modern black woman who transported into the antebellum South. Of course, her life was in danger and a lot of things happened. I have heard nothing but good things about this book, and I will make sure to read it, if not this year, next year. Following, we have The Beast by Lalin Powell. This book was recommended to me by Clarice, who always have the most wholesome conversations with me. I read Pod by the same author this year, and it was very experimental, and I like it for that. The Beast, to my understanding, is also very experimental. We follow Flora, who was born into the lowest class of bees in her society as a sanitation bee, and we follow her discovering secrets in her society and also run into forbidden land. Another science fiction is After the Fall, Before the Fall, During the Fall by Nancy Criss. This was recommended to me by Zach again, and is a dystopian novel set in 2035. The story is talking about after a disaster, the only 26 remaining humans on the earth are trapped by alien race, and things started to happen, and I believe there's also a timeline in 2013 which we can jump back and see the human activities. Zach says this book could be a very good companion novel to a book that I really loved called I Who Have Never Known Man, and I'm really looking forward to it. The last book in this section is a fantasy, and it is Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is another book that I actually own and I wanted to read it, but for some reason, I read another books by the same author instead. So I read Yellowface this year, and I was a little bit underwhelmed by it, but after I've done that, everybody has told me this is not the best work of R.F. Kuang. If I really want to read her works, I have to read Babel. For example, CFBG especially recommended this book to me, and to be honest, at this point, I just think this book should be one of my priorities because I have the physical copy and everybody is praising it, and I also want to dive into fantasy genre. Now let's move on to the next genre, which is memoir, and I have already read the next book in this session, which is Real Queer America by Samantha Allen. This book, needless to say, was recommended to me by Alex. This is a memoir of Samantha where she drives through the country and into the deep south to talk to the queer community and discussing why they choose to live in the States with more challenges. And obviously, I love this book. It was one of my favorite memoirs, and I have included in my memoir recommendations video. The next memoir I have also already read. It is The Opposite of Butterfly Hunting by Ivana Lynch, and this one was recommended to me by Lily. And this is a book about Ivana Lynch's recovery story from anorexia, and I have never seen anyone who writes mental struggles in such a sensible way, and I just love this book so much. Moving on to the memoirs that I have not read yet, we have Everything is Okay by Debbie Tong. This book is recommended to me by Shannon, and this is a graphic memoir talking about anxiety and depression, exploring the author's journey of understanding the importance of mental health and also embrace the highs and lows in life. As a person who wants to read anything and everything about mental health, I am of course interested in this title. Moving on, I have a book that Zoe just recommended to me, and it is Free, Coming of Age at the End of History by Lee E.P. It says that this is a poignant memoir about family tale and political awakening. It talks about the time where life changed overnight because of the changes in the political climate, and our author Lee found herself questioning what is the true meaning of freedom. Next, let's move on to general nonfiction. I have read The Empire of Pain earlier this year and I absolutely loved it. So Alex recommended me two books by the same author, Patrick Radham Keefe. One is Rogues and the other one is Say Nothing. I have seen Say Nothing everywhere, and it's a true crime stories about the Northern Ireland conflict during the Troubles, and it's about the brutal violence and the notorious killings. This has been on my TBR already before Alex mentioned it, but I haven't heard about The Rogues, which to my understanding is a collection of Patrick's reportings. Following, I have two books that are recommended by Cousin. The first one is There Are No Accidents by Jesse Singers. This is a book about urban planning, especially about the times when there's an accident happen and we hear the phrases like, "Oh, I'm sorry, this is just an accident." And the book explains that there's never an accident. Everything is actually predictable and preventable. And the second book is The Fourth Time We Drowned by Sally Hayden. This is the book about the refugee crisis in North Africa. In 2018, Sally Hayden received some messages on Facebook talking about their refugee stories and how they are captured in Libya. So she started to investigate and uncovered a series of inhuman stories. I have actually borrowed this book from the library once when I first heard about it, but unfortunately I didn't have time to finish it, so I have to return it to the library. However, I have since been thinking about it non-stop, so this book will be another one of my priorities in the future. Clarice has recommended a book called On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. This is because I was talking about how much I loved How to Lose a Country, and after this recommendation, I found out that I have already marked this book in my interest to read list, but I just forgot to prioritize it. So this recommendation definitely put this book back to the prioritized list. Timothy Snyder is a historian, and in this book he draws things from the darkest time in the 20th century to provide hope for the 21st. In the end of the book section, we have another book that was recommended by Zoe, and it is in Chinese. It is called 浮出历史地表 by 戴锦华. The title translates to Resurfacing from the Historical Horizon. This is a classic work that studies the history of modern Chinese women's literature. It follows 9 very profound and important modern female writers in China and employs a feminism perspective. Zoe recommended this book to me earlier this year, and I have since acquired the physical copy. However, I haven't started to read it yet, and I'm again very embarrassed. And that's all the individual titles that I got from you guys' recommendation. But for my From and About Asia reading project for the country of Malaysia, Shannon and Freddie together recommended 4 awesome writers to me. And I'm gonna butcher some name here, but they are Shih-Li Kow, Twan Ng, Rita Samarazan, and Hannah Alcuff. And there you have it, a list of books and authors that you guys recommended to me in the comment section. And I'm so grateful for every recommendations because you guys truly make BookTube an even better place. And please let me know any of your thoughts down below. If there are any books that you want me to prioritize, do you have even more recommendations? Because I will take notes and I will make it happen. And I hope you enjoyed today's video, and hopefully you can find some books that you are interested in also. And as usual, don't forget to say hi in the comment section down below. Thumbs up to this video if you liked it. I wish you happy reading, stay healthy, stay safe. I'll see you in my next bookish video. Bye!